Hi everyone. Over the past number of years, we've seen a lot of discussion around the move towards 15-minute cities, and of course, it's all for convenience, isn't it? But we've seen recently here in Ireland, Sean Ryan, the multi-millionaire developer of Ballymore Properties, a man who was bailed out through the financial crash that we all paid for through devastating austerity, where the bankers and developers were bailed out, but the people were sold out. We've also seen him pushing forward with this plan for Athlone, a €5 billion plan by 2030 to get Athlone into a 15-minute city. And this is very interesting because the government's policies back up this move towards the 15-minute cities. And it's not just government policies, it's also many of the local authorities and the institutions in the state that are pushing forward this Living City initiative. Now, this started back in 2015. And what was really interesting with this is that it started as a tax incentive scheme to assist and encourage people to live in the historic inner city areas of Dublin, such as the Georgian part of Dublin. And it was to regenerate these areas where tax reliefs could be claimed, where it could be accelerated capital allowances and other forms of relief and kickbacks to those who were trying to bring life back into the city. But of course, we know it doesn't benefit ordinary people. It only benefits those that have versus those that don't. And what was really interesting with the most recent budget announcement is that this scheme has now been extended. It was already in a number of cities such as Cork, apart from Dublin, Galway, Limerick, Waterford and Kilkenny, and it's been pushed through their local authorities. And this scheme, as I said, has been extended to other areas around Ireland, such as Athlone, which I've mentioned earlier with Sean Mulryan, Letterkenny in County Donegal, Drogheda and Dundalk in County Louth, and Sligo. Now, this is fascinating because these reliefs have been extended from 200,000 per property up to 300,000. So more kickbacks to those who have property around Ireland. And on top of that, we've seen that this scheme has been extended to the 31st of December 2030. So more tax incentives, more kickbacks for developers, and a move towards the over-the-shop premises in terms of bringing it back into life. And this has also been extended to buildings, for instance, that are now built before 1975. Previously, there were older buildings, well over 100 years old, to be eligible for this scheme. But as I said, this scheme has been extended and it's going to cost an absolute fortune for people. But really, what's behind this? This has been pushed by various chambers of commerce. The Dundalk CEO of the Chamber of Commerce is a man called John McGahan. Of course, we all know about him from Fine Gael. And he said this was a key priority to be added to this scheme, and it's to emphasise the push towards special regeneration areas in those parts of Ireland. So this is an underhanded, covert way of moving towards these 15-minute cities, where you have an urban planning model working in collaboration with the government, working around the daily needs of people to be met within a designated zone in terms of these 15-minute cities that people like Sean Mulryan have been pushing. And of course, the World Economic Forum on a larger scale has been pushing this. And it's about walking, cycling within your 15-minute area, and you can have all your needs met within this region as well. And what is, as I said, is really fascinating with this is that this is a drive towards net zero. And of course, it's about control. If you give the profiteers the advantage in terms of making massive money from this, in terms of the kickbacks, tax breaks, when at the same time ordinary people were left behind in the last most recent budget, and coupled with the public bodies such as the local authorities taking control of this, we all know what's behind it. It's not about working for the betterment of people, it's about control, and they'll claim it under it's more sustainable. Of course, this is a big part of the sustainable development goals. Of course, the 17 goals have to be implemented by 2030 by the United Nations, which seem benign, but of course, this is a push towards digital ID stroke digital currency as well. Isn't this interesting how this all knits together? And of course, if you look at this climate agenda and it's the 15-minute city agenda, we've seen that, for instance, during the period of COVID, where you had your 2 kilometre restriction from your home and all this type of nonsense. this is going to be moved up and ratcheted up at a grander scale. What really sounds really revealing with this is that if you look behind it, there's obviously planners and people like an architect by the name of Carlos Moreno, who back in 2016 was pushing this 15-minute city towards preserving the climate and moving towards a new economic model. And that's very interesting and revealing too. And behind him is the C40. This is a group of over 97 cities with about 10% of the total global population. And who's controlling this and who's behind it? It's the Clinton Climate Initiative, the Clinton Foundation, and of course it's headed up by Sadiq Khan, who is the Mayor of London currently. And of course, who's behind this? Build Back Better, Michael Bloomberg as well. Isn't it interesting how it all fits together in terms of moving this agenda forward? And when they look about this Live in the City initiative, without a doubt, there should be more people living in the city and more supports. But what this is a drive towards more kickbacks through public-private partnerships, more tax incentives, more investment breaks, more reliefs for the big investors and commercial property owners, and ordinary people are picking up the tab for this. Who's going to pay the extortionate rents? It's going to be ordinary people. Who's going to profit from it? It's going to be these vulture funds and the Mulryans of this world. And of course, Sean Mulryan himself is good friends with Bertie Ahern. Obviously was involved and brought into NAMA that we all bailed out back through the austerity years. And at the same time, he was a big part of the Galway tent. And Mulryan will profit massively from this, much the same as many others in terms of the political elites here in Ireland. Of course, James Geoghegan, and he is the spokesperson for Fine Gael for Dublin, and he spoke back in 2021 about moving towards a 15-minute city in terms of its convenience, sustainability, and all this type of nonsense. But of course, these are areas of Dublin, for instance, and area districts around our country, which have been neglected for years and years. We've seen working class areas, and particularly around Dublin, that have been destroyed in terms of policies where they live in overcrowded accommodation, people in terms of flat complexes being ran down into the ground. But of course, it's all about pushing this bigger agenda. It's not about serving the interests of people. So the Live in City initiative, another ruse and a covert way to implement these sustainable development goals and a move towards a 15-minute city. That's what's been presented in the most recent budget. Of course, there'll be no commentary around this whatsoever to what's taken place in Irish society. So please share my videos, subscribe, and thanks so much for all the support. Slán go fóill. Take care.